You are 7 years old and you are being pulled from your mother's arms. She is screaming. You are screaming, but no one stops it. Men in uniforms drag you through the door while your mother collapses, begging them to take her instead. But they do not want her. They want you because you are small, because you can fit into spaces adults cannot, because you are cheap, because you are replaceable. You are loaded into a wagon with a dozen other children, some younger than you, all crying, all terrified. You are taken to a factory. You are shown to a massive machine with gears and belts and metal parts moving so fast they blur. A man tells you to crawl underneath while it is running, to clean out the cotton fibers that get stuck, to reach into the moving parts and pull out the blockages. If you refuse, you will be beaten. If you are too slow, you will be beaten. If you get caught in the machine and die, they will just find another child. This is not a nightmare. This is real. And this is your life now. This was the brutal reality in industrial Britain and America during the late 1700s and 1800s, a time when factory owners had absolute power and human life, especially the lives of poor children, had almost no value. The Industrial Revolution created massive demand for cheap labor. Textile mills, coal mines, and manufacturing plants operated around the clock. But the machinery was dangerous, the spaces were cramped, and the work required small hands and bodies. So factory owners turned to the poorest families and the workhouses where orphaned and abandoned children lived. They took children as young as 5 and put them to work in conditions designed to extract maximum productivity with zero concern for safety or survival. This was not just child labor. This was systematic exploitation built on society's complete lack of mercy for the vulnerable. Families had no power to refuse. The law protected owners, not workers. And children died by the thousands in jobs that should never have existed. Her name was Eliza. She was 8 years old when she was taken to work in a textile mill in Manchester. She was not an orphan. She had a mother and 2 younger siblings. But her father had died in a factory accident, and the family had no income. When the mill owner's agent came to their slum offering to employ Eliza, her mother had no choice. The agent said Eliza would be fed, housed, and trained. He did not mention that she would be worked 16 hours a day. He did not mention that she would be locked in the factory. He did not mention that she would likely not survive past her teenage years. Eliza's mother signed the paper because refusing meant watching all 3 of her children starve. Eliza was taken that same day. She did not understand what was happening. She thought she was going to learn a trade, that she would come home at night. She did not know she would never see her mother again. Eliza was brought to the mill and assigned to work as a scavenger. This was one of the most dangerous jobs in the factory. While the massive spinning machines were running at full speed, Eliza had to crawl underneath them to collect loose cotton fibers that fell to the floor. The machines never stopped. The gears and belts moved constantly, just inches above her head and beside her body. If she raised her head too high, she would be caught and killed instantly. If her clothing snagged on a moving part, she would be pulled in and crushed. Eliza worked in a crouch, moving quickly, reaching into spaces barely wide enough for her small body, all while the deafening roar of machinery filled her ears and made it impossible to hear warnings or instructions. The work was relentless. Eliza started at 5 in the morning and worked until 9 at night, with 2 short breaks for watery porridge. Her hands were raw and bleeding from handling rough cotton fibers. Her back ached constantly from the cramped position. Her knees were bruised and cut from crawling on hard factory floors. The air was thick with cotton dust that made her cough until she gagged. The factory was sweltering in summer and freezing in winter. There was no ventilation, no heat, no concern for comfort. The overseers walked between the machines with leather straps. If a child slowed down, if they hesitated, if they showed any sign of weakness, they were beaten. Eliza was beaten on her second day for not moving fast enough. She learned quickly that pain was constant and mercy did not exist here. Eliza stopped being a child. Within weeks, she stopped crying. She stopped asking when she could go home. She stopped thinking about her mother and siblings. She just existed in a fog of exhaustion and pain, moving through each day mechanically, focused only on not getting caught in the machines. She slept in a crowded dormitory with other child workers, packed onto wooden bunks with thin blankets. They were given just enough food to keep them alive and working. Many children were sick constantly. Some had terrible coughs from the dust. Others had infections from untreated injuries. Eliza watched children die. A girl in the bunk next to hers simply did not wake up one morning. The overseers removed the body and put another child in that spot the same day. The isolation was absolute. Eliza had no contact with the outside world, no letters from her family, no visits, no acknowledgement that she was a human being with a life beyond this factory. She was just a unit of production, a small body that could fit under machines, cheap and disposable. The factory owners did not see her as a person. The overseers did not care about her suffering. And society had created laws that made all of this completely legal. Eliza had no rights, no protections, no way to escape. She was trapped in a system designed to use her up and throw her away. Think about this. Imagine being 8 years old and knowing that every single adult in your world sees you as nothing more than a tool. Imagine understanding that your life has no value beyond your ability to work. Could a child survive that knowledge? And what kind of society creates systems that require the destruction of children to function? The dangers killed regularly. Children were caught in machines almost daily. Eliza saw a boy's arm get pulled into a spinning belt. The machine ripped his arm off at the shoulder before anyone could stop it. He bled to death on the factory floor while the machines around him kept running. The overseers covered the blood with sawdust and sent the other children back to work. No doctor was called. No investigation was conducted. The boy's body was removed and a new child was brought in to replace him. Eliza had nightmares about that moment for the rest of her short life. She saw the boy's face. She heard his screams, and she knew it could happen to her at any moment. Disease was even more lethal than accidents. The cotton dust that filled the air destroyed lungs. Eliza developed a chronic cough within her first 6 months. She coughed up blood regularly. Her chest hurt constantly. She could not breathe deeply. Other children had the same symptoms. Some collapsed from exhaustion and respiratory failure. The factory provided no medical care. Sick children were just replaced. Tuberculosis spread rapidly in the crowded, poorly ventilated spaces. Eliza watched dozens of children waste away, coughing and feverish until they died. Their bodies were buried in unmarked graves, and new children were brought in. But here is the truth that makes this even darker. The factory owners and the government knew exactly what was happening. Reports were written. Investigations were conducted. Reformers documented the deaths and the conditions. And for decades, nothing changed. Because the system was profitable, factory owners made fortunes while children died. Politicians who received donations and bribes from factory owners blocked reform legislation. Society valued cheap cloth more than children's lives. It was not ignorance. It was a calculated decision that profit mattered more than human suffering, and that decision was enforced by law. Now think about this. Child labor still exists. Right now, children are working in factories, mines, and fields in conditions not much different from what Eliza endured. They make products you probably own. Does knowing that change anything? Or is it easier to ignore because it happens far away? Most child factory workers did not survive more than 5 years. Their bodies broke down completely. Eliza lasted 3 years. By the time she was 11, she was destroyed. Her lungs were so damaged she could barely walk without gasping for air. Her spine was curved from years of crouching. Her hands were deformed from repetitive strain and untreated injuries. She looked like a dying old woman. And then she had an accident. While reaching under a machine to clear a blockage, her dress caught on a moving gear. She was pulled into the machinery before she could scream. The machine crushed her chest and abdomen. Other workers pulled her out, but the damage was catastrophic. She was carried to a corner of the factory and left on the floor. No doctor came. No one comforted her. She died alone in agony, surrounded by the sound of machines still running. She was 11 years old. Eliza's body was buried in a mass grave with other factory workers. Her mother was never notified. She spent the rest of her life not knowing whether her daughter was alive or dead, hoping for a letter that would never come. The factory hired another child the same day Eliza died. The machines kept running. The cloth kept being produced, and society kept buying it without thinking about the cost. Society needed cheap textiles. It needed mass production. It needed industrial growth. And it decided that children like Eliza were an acceptable price to pay for those things. Eliza worked herself to death so people could have affordable clothing. She was crushed in a machine so the economy could expand. She died at 11 so factory owners could become wealthy. And society did not care because it had decided that mercy for the poor and the vulnerable was too expensive. The system was not broken. It was working exactly as designed. It extracted maximum value from human lives and discarded them when they were used up. The system eventually changed, but only after decades of activism, strikes, and public outrage. Child labor laws were passed. Working conditions improved slightly. But those changes came too late for Eliza and the hundreds of thousands like her who were destroyed before protections existed. They died so future generations would have rights. They paid the price for reforms they would never benefit from. Eliza is gone now. The factory where she died has been demolished. The machines that killed her have been scrapped, but the cloth she helped produce clothed a generation. The wealth her labor created built empires, and her suffering made industrial progress possible. She had no choice. She had no voice. She had no mercy shown to her, and society moved forward without ever acknowledging what it had done. If you think child factory work was the only job that existed because society had no mercy, there were others. Jobs that consumed even more lives. Jobs that society needed but refused to humanize. Jobs where the suffering was the point, not an unfortunate side effect. And some of those systems are still operating today.